Vinay, is a vast subject and it has many dimensions. And I don't think it would do well to cover all of them, but I think three principal dimensions may be of interest. One draws upon the idea that strategy has to do with attainment of an objective, of a goal. And therefore, strategic thinking can be described as goal-directed thinking. That kind of thinking that helps us and organizations achieve an implicit or an explicit goal. Another way to look at strategic thinking is to consider the very vast number of factors and variables that an individual, but more importantly, a manager or a leader in an organization has to consider to formulate a strategy. And these variety of factors could be internal or external to the organization. It could be resources, it could be cash, it could be people. It could also be the environmental influences on both the strategy of the organization as well as the outcomes. So this aspect has to do with abstract thinking, and this aspect has to do with integrative thinking. The third approach is to anticipate the choices of other players in the game. See, whether as an individual or as an organization, we are in interactive, interconnected human systems. And therefore, the outcome of our choices are deeply interactive. They depend on not just what we do, but also what others do. And therefore, it is important to figure out the impact of other people's choices on the choices that we may have. And this I like to call anticipatory thinking. And this anticipatory thinking is anchored in game theory. So, strategic thinking in sum can be described as an abstract process of solving problems or achieving one's or a firm's aspirations. It involves integrative thinking of contextual factors, and it also must involve how other players impact the game that we play. And almost invariably, whatever we do in business, there are suppliers, there are customers, and there are competitors with whom we interact. And therefore, interaction of all of these factors must take into account how the game will shape itself in the future as time progresses.
Right.
Yeah, does that help?
Yeah, it definitely helps. So goal-directed thinking, integrative thinking, and anticipatory thinking, right?
Yes.
And of course, you're saying anticipatory thinking does involve thinking deeper into the game of different multiple levels, right? I think it's a very...
What kind of game it is?
Yeah.
What kind of game is it? For example, a simple game of negotiation is actually modeled in game theory as a sequential thinking, right? And yet there are purchasing systems that use tender processes that are, for example, a kind of simultaneous games. And the element of strategy is not only that the buyer is involved in creating a game that gives him or them the advantage.
Right.
And the suppliers in turn have to also negotiate that to create advantage for themselves.
True. And these games are, you're saying, not only competitive, but also cooperative at the same time.
Yes, indeed. Very good point. Yes. Yeah. They can be competitive and they can be cooperative.
Right.
Yes. And as we would remember in the last, let's say 10, 12 years, we have seen cooperation emerge in the fiercely competitive telecom industry in India, the cellular telephony industry.
Right.
In the beginning, all of these telecom operators, they created their own towers, they created their own bandwidth, they created their own fiber networks. And then now they ride each other's fiber network. Right. On the same tower today, you will see radios of Airtel, Vodafone, Reliance, all of them, and that's cooperative behavior. Yeah.
I think that's a very
so
good
they
example.
choose. Yeah. So they choose where to compete and when to cooperate.
Right.